All right, all right. Shalom, shalom, lechochem, shalom to all of you, and welcome to Yah Conscious Radio, where if it's not conscious, it's not acceptable. I am joined with Chief Zebulon Ben Lewi Hedekia. Shalom, shalom, Chief.
Hallelujah. Shalom Barak Bashem Yah. All praise
Hallelujah.
to the Most High Yah, the power of our fathers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And I want to go ahead and do the same. Rashid, Anirote, Alatet, Kabod, We Shabach, Yahweh El Elyon, Elohe, Abraham, Yishak, we Yaakov. So first I want to give honor and praise to get honor and praise to He that calls us to be or exist. Power of Abraham, power of Isaac, and power of Jacob. We have a great topic to discuss today. Um, unfortunately, man, I was waiting on that roadcaster to be here so I could bring forth the music, man. But FedEx, do not go through FedEx, people. Do not go through FedEx.
FedEx is the devil. The FedEx is the devil that the Bible speaks of.
Yeah, man, they were supposed to be here today, man. I had some good music for you all, but next show we're going to be bringing it forth. So today's topic is on toxic followership. Toxic followership. But before we go into it, man, it might be some of you that are new to us. Our faces are new to you. So if we can, I would love for us to give a little background or introduction on who we are for those that's new. So, Chief, did you want to go ahead and lead off with the introduction of yourself?
Yeah, no doubt. Those are the people out there who do know. They know. Those who don't know, I'm Chief Zebulon Belewi Hedekia, or Rosh Zabulin Belewi Hedekia for those who are more Hebraically astute in pronunciation or whatever. But yeah, I'm obviously Hebrew Israelite, Moreh Chief, in Israel. Came in this walk November 22nd, 1993. I came through the doors of Machane Yakad, or as they call it, Camp Yakad in Brooklyn, New York, under the leadership of Chief Prince Zapor, the late Chief Amos, and the late Chief of Chiefs Naphtali ben Naphtali, and they of course come out of the pedigree of Bnei Zakin, under the leadership of Nasi Yaakov. Like I said, I've been in this walk, this particular walk, since 1993. Prior to that, I was into other Black Power movements, Islam, 5%, Nawapi, and all of that. Nubian Islamic Hebrew. So my journey has been going on for the better part of 32, 33 years, 34 years or whatever. But in this walk, since 1993. I'm an author, uh, semi-retired musician, uh, but for the most part, I'm just a cog in the vast machinery of Israel, just doing my part to bring Hebraic decorum and Hebraic conscience
Right.
to our people, in whatever manner that I'm able to. So that's the short story,
Right.
and it's
Appreciate
on you.
that. Appreciate that, man. For those of you who do not know me, I am Morris Shematal Yahoo. I actually started off with IOG in Chicago, Illinois, and I've been in this walk for about I want to say around 10 years, maybe. I don't know the exact day. You about to make me go and find out the exact day I started. He gave us the day, the time. Um, but yeah, I
You
started
got
on
to show your
IOG.
registry.
I hear you. I hear you. Um, I identify with being a Israelite or uh, Israel, and I have. I'm over here stuttering over here, man. Freaking Hebrew. Um, but I've been in this walk for about 10 years, and I'm also a musician. I would say retired, man. I mean, I come up with songs and put it out here and there, music that is moving our people, um, creating thought. My ministry is mostly dealing with man and woman and community. Um, and I actually, probably I want to say about 4 years, 5 years in the walk. How long we knew each other, Chief? About 5 years now. 6 years, 5, 4. I want to say
yeah, about 5 years.
about 5 years, yeah. So I want to say about 5 years in the walk. That's when I met Chief, and we kind of been doing things like this since then. Had a platform called um, uh, uh, I had his taught ones before this, but then we had love language, the round table, and we dealt with a lot of different situations within the community, positive and negative, and how to navigate and bring forth solutions to help us succeed. From there, that's when I want to say it was the last year. What was the last year? Yeah, 2020. I want to say May of 2020 is when I became ordained as a Moreh, actually through Beta Aguda, which is Chief Moreh Zebulon. And man, I'm an author as well. I mean, I haven't written as many books as the chief has, but I'm trying to do that, put out literature for our people, and that's what we came. Now we have Yah Conscious Radio, where we're going to be discussing a lot of different matters, hoping to provoke thought and using the principles of our ancient literature. So appreciate all that, man. Hopefully y'all got something out of that. So let's get started with the topic. Toxic.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir. And I want to kick it off with a script, which is, for those of you it's Proverbs 29:18. And where there is no vision, the people perish. But he that keepeth the law, happy is he. He that keepeth the law, happy is he. Now, contextually, we know that this is speaking of the Torah, but for those of you that are trying to find your way with the Most High and through our literature, but not quite there yet, this is just having structure within any organization that you're a part of. When you think of businesses can't thrive if they don't have a blueprint or if they don't have a vision. They can't thrive. So this is actually universal knowledge or universal advice, even though it is extracted from our ancient literature. What's your thoughts on this particular scripture here, and what does it speak to you, Chief, when dealing with what we're talking about today, toxic followership?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, we talk about, when there is no vision, the people perish. Now, of course, it doesn't take any deep rumination or deep Hebraic hermeneutics in order to figure out the essence of what this is, what we're talking about, what that scripture is talking about. We do know, not only scripturally, but we know in real time, that when you don't have a vision, the only outcome that you can have is death on whatever levels. But when you don't have that vision, you don't have the ability to navigate, and you're only going to lose in those type of scenarios. When I think about that script, and I think about the subject of toxic followership, and even to another degree, toxic leadership. We had I think it was I'm trying to remember who actually pushed the platform, but when we had the manhood discussion some months ago, it was probably more than a few months, whatever. But it was a good, within the last year, we'll say that.
Yes, sir.
And when we had the manhood little seminar, this was something that I was very adamant about, and that is that when we talk about manhood, you have to talk about vision and purpose.
Okay.
You have to have, you have to have the purpose. You have to have the vision. If you don't have the vision, you're going to fail as a man. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. But in the case of leadership and followership, I think it goes a little bit deeper. Now, as far as leadership is concerned, we already know all of the backstories of bad leadership. We sing about it, we talk about it, we argue about it, we debate about it. You always hear it's a never-ending narrative about these so-called leaders, our
Right.
so-called leaders, these so-called priests and so-called mores and so-called. We always hear that narrative,
Right.
and in some cases, yeah, it's a valid it's a valid right. Unfortunately, some of the leaders, you know, they're not very good leaders.
Okay.
That's life. And also keeping in mind that many of them did not have um good examples of leadership. Sometimes leaders have to figure it out as they go along because they didn't have, everybody doesn't have pedigree. Everybody doesn't have someone that they came from where they could have received the right course of action when it came to being a teacher.
Right.
Some people are waking up as first generation Hebrews and they're trying to figure it out. And so they're doing the best that they can as they go forward. Are they going to make mistakes? Absolutely. That's part of
A lot
life.
of them, especially if you don't got no pedigree, you're gonna make a lot.
Right. I mean, and there's those of us who have pedigree and still
And
made the
still making
mistakes.
a lot.
So it
Right.
so I mean it's bad leadership is nothing new. Like I said, we talk about it. It's something that is regurgitated over and over and over. So-called leaders, so-called chiefs, so-called mores, so-called whatever. There's always this narrative when things go wrong, you point to the leadership. And
Mhm.
again, to a certain degree, that's valid. Okay. But what you don't hear about is toxic followership. And what do we mean by toxic followership? This is an example. What we're doing with that term is to show that, and we're going to get further, into it as the discussion goes, to
Mhm.
show that many of the fallouts and the downfalls of leaders can equally be attributed to their followers. The followers also contribute to the fall of leaders,
Okay.
and we're going to get into that. But I think that anytime you're dealing with issues of leadership, um, like I said, there's always going to be that element of um, you know leaders taking the fall. They're the ones they're the fall guy. Why? Because they're the one that's right there, front and center. So
That's right.
they're naturally going to catch it.
And excellent points. That's excellent points. I think that we already know that, I agree with it. The leaders are supposed to have, get the most of the repercussions when, making that commitment. Um One of the things I thought about when you were speaking, you probably saw me writing down as you were speaking. I started thinking of three different scenarios. We spoke on people when they had a pedigree. They're
Yes, sir.
getting it together. Oh no, the ones that didn't have pedigree, forgive me slightly. They're getting it together. They're learning throughout the course of their journey. Then you have those that do have a pedigree and they still fall short in that leadership role. And I think that just has to do with just trial and error at the same time. But what we didn't bring out with that, because that's still a good thing in my opinion, even the leaders who had the pedigree and they're learning to really take that role of leadership and they're going to mess up, that doesn't speak on their intent, because that still sounds like that's a good leader just trying and just failing. But we do, since the beginning of time probably, but within our literature, when we look at the Tanakh, we see in Yeshayahu 28, you know what I'm saying? We see it spoken out in Yirmiyahu or Jeremiah, you know, on how the leaders, how they actually were purposely, dealing with the people. So we want to make sure we speak on that, which I know you of course you already know that, but for the listeners out there, we want to make sure we do understand that side of it too. It is some corrupt leaders out there doing it for certain reasons. Who knows? But you also said something else, Chief, and I thought about something. I thought about when Moshe, some people would say, left, right? And you have, I was going with it. I'm listening to you. I'm like, wait a minute, man, hold on. You got Aharon, who was left with the people he knew, but he was peer pressured, in my opinion, by the people. This and as a leader, he probably should have still stood his ground. But look, that's one person, with the few people that he had. Because think about it, even today, let's fast forward today. We got policemen out here, right? The police is actually small in comparison to the people within each city.
Right.
And we got weapons, firearms, and all that. They didn't have this type of stuff that they got now that can control the people, a mass of people. So I'm saying that to use that to bring out, you got Aharon, you had the few people, the priest that was with him or whatnot. They wasn't gonna be able to manage all those people. So he was pressured, in my opinion. And that goes back to the vision part that I was talking about, how that can be, how I believe the followers need to have a certain type of vision. I remember, and I'm gonna say this last thing before we go into because I'm still commenting on that. I remember when I came to you as wanting to start my pedigree, and one of the things you told me, and correct me if I'm wrong, is you're very in my opinion, off of what you said, because I don't know the exact wording, but kind of calculated on who you take on as far as, bringing them into a pedigree of a Moraine or Morale or anything like that. Because you're looking at the intent, you're looking at their heart, you're looking at their vision. I'm throwing that vision part in there. And that's why I extracted from what you were saying. And that's why I'm bringing out where there's no vision, the people perish too. I believe that the followers need to have a specific vision and see a goal. Before we get started with the questions, I want to read something. And these are the characteristics of a toxic followership that I looked up, right? It says they typically involve an abusive personal attribute, a misplaced sense of entitlement. You do that whole story with the children of Israel and how they was all entitled when they left and stuff like that. We see that all across the board. Or a lack of competence, undermining the ability to build a positive command climate. So these people have to understand, in my opinion, the vision for success. And that's one of the things I want to throw out there and add to it before we, got to the first question. What's your thoughts on what I brought out there?
Yeah, no, that's and that's now, now we're starting to peel back the layers of the onion. This is essentially what toxic followership is, because and let me zoom in on that portion about a sense of entitlement. And and for the sake of the conversation, I'm going to keep the conversation kind of limited in a sense to the Hebrew community. Yeah, because if we go into other communities, the conversation can just kind of get lost. But even with dealing with, let's say, a camp setting, because let's keep it real, 98% of Hebrews of reputation came through camps.
Okay.
So when you look at a camp situation, and I'll give you an example of toxic followership with a camp setting. One of the things that I do when anybody approaches me on a level of, hey, I want to learn what or I want to, let's build, I need some direction in certain things or whatever the case. One of the first conversations that I have with people, and I do it very smoothly because I don't want the person to pick up on what I'm doing. And I guess now I'm going to reveal what I'm doing. which is kind of counterintuitive here.
Okay.
But one of the first things that I do is I strike up multiple conversations with them, circling around or centered around the camp that they came from. Now, I'm not probing them for certain answers, whatever like that. I'm putting things out there, and I'm letting them freely put certain things out there about the camp that they come from. Because one of the things that I have learned over time, over the past few decades, is membership in a camp is just like a job interview.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm the supervisor, I'm there at the job. You come in, you want membership in this job, you want to work here. What's the first thing that you're supposed to provide that, that supervisor or that employer? Where is your resume?
Right.
Pedigree.
That's right.
What have you been doing? And specifically in the resume, what is one of the most, you can list all your accomplishments, all of that. Okay, yeah, that's all good. But what's one of the most important parts of a resume? Your references.
Okay.
Who is going to co-sign you? Who have you worked for? Now, I'm having a conversation with you, and I'm like, yeah. So, tell me a little bit about, your former employers, should I say?
Mm-hmm.
And if you go on a tangent, let's say you have 4 or 5 employers, and all of your responses about these employers are negative, that's a red flag for me right there.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm like, well, wait a minute. So all of your employers were a-holes? All of them? No. And that's something that we talk about in the book, High Guy Principle, about the Halle Berry syndrome. Like, no, after a while, no, it's you. You are the problem.
Something ain't adding up.
Right. Because all of your employers were horrible,
Mm-hmm.
and you've done nothing wrong, but everybody else is wrong. No, the problem is you.
Mm-hmm.
And so from a camp standpoint, when someone is coming, when someone's coming into my zone to build, one of the first things that I do is I'm interviewing them. But we're having conversations about other things. We're talking about this script or that script and what's going on Facebook, having all these whatever. But I'm listening very intently concerning their vantage point about the camp that they come from. So if I hear someone berating the elder that they came from under, I don't respect. He ain't no real Morey, or he ain't no real priest, or he ain't whatever. Like, I'm listening, and I'm like, so you don't even honor, or you don't even have respect for the 5th commandment.
That's right.
Honor your father and your mother, and these are your spiritual fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Straight like that. They woke you up through the power of the Most High. So when I'm talking to somebody, and whether they be from IG or from IOG or from GOCC or whatever camp they came out of originally, and if everything that's coming from them is disdain, disrespect,
Right.
I immediately put them in a box and say, you know what? I'm gonna keep them on the side because I can't trust them.
Yeah.
Because you're already showing me that you have no respect and honor for your father, even in your physical father. Even if your like my father he didn't know this truth. My father,
Mm-hmm.
he was still living his life. He eating his ham and stuff like that, doing what he does or whatever the case may be. So there were some things that was off about my father, but you know what? That's my father.
That's right.
And I respect my father and I love my father. Now, Ben Sirach in the so-called Apocrypha makes that statement crystal clear. It says says not to dishonor your father. For his dishonor is no honor to you.
Mm.
So dumping on your father doesn't make you a bigger man. It makes you a lame because you are the product of that. You came from those loins.
Yeah, now even going into a broader sense, because I think that's important. I think that's a lack of integrity too. You know, but going broader, I mean, we see that a lot, just even in the so-called black community. Like it's like only certain times we have this honor for those of eldership, or parents, or those that was looking over us even in the walk, like you have brought out. I just think that's a lack of integrity, also ignorance too. I think some people, they should know these things, but they don't. Like I was in this walk for, like I said, almost 10 years, and I want to say, man, probably recently, to the point where now I know when the elder comes, you need to stand up.
Yes, sir.
People, I wasn't taught that. I was not taught that at all until I really started going into our literature and certain things like that, having conversations with you all. And I'm like, I said, wait a minute. When you're in the courthouse and that judge walk in, everybody stands up.
That's right.
It's a certain your honor. That's what they say. That's what they call them, right? Your honor.
Your
So
your your what?
your honor.
Honor.
Yeah, that's a form of true honor and respect. And I think that we lost that even within the Israelite community. I think that, and I won't say that I'm not going to be in what you say, the fishbowl. I'm not going to say that because I haven't been around every camp or anything like that. So they might do that. I just haven't seen that often where I was at, and I don't want to put any shade on where I came from. I don't know if I really, maybe I didn't pay attention to it when I first started. So that could be the
Right.
case that they did do that, and I just didn't really notice. But now that I'm in this light of understanding what I should do, now I can look at it in that fashion. So
Yeah. I
let's go.
mean,
Let's go ahead.
no. I mean, it's these are things that again, you can't, if you did not get this in a camp,
Mm-hmm.
you're probably not going to get it online, because online, I mean, think about it, how many times have you been on StreamYard or any of these streaming situations, and you're talking to an elder? How many times do you see people on camera, right? Standing up when
Right.
because it's not, because all of this is it's an artificial construct.
Mm-hmm.
But in camp settings, oh no, you're going to stand, you're going to rise before elder, and you're going to speak much less, even with a situation like what we were having with Maurice Lane when he first came on the Love Language platform.
That's right.
And I'm a chief man.
Mm-hmm.
I've been moving in these circles, in this walk, for a very long time. But when an elder comes on the scene, it doesn't matter who I am or what, respect is given, and I know how to keep my mouth shut and let the elder speak.
That's right.
And
That's right.
that's because those were the type of men that I came up under. These are the type of men that influenced me to show me that no, that just like when when the scripture says, when the law says to honor your father and mother, that is literally and figuratively true.
Mm-hmm.
Honor. What is that? Wa'ikra 19. I forget the verse 32.
Mm-hmm.
You shall rise up before the
Right.
hoary head
Yes.
and and honor honor the face of the old man.
And for those that's listening, if you listening back, or if you're listening now, because I see we do have someone, Wa'ikra is Leviticus. And that's what I
Yeah,
was
yeah.
saying when I went back through it, and this was recent. I want to say, I think I came to you and talked about it. I think I don't know where it came from. I just know I was reading Leviticus, or I don't know if you brought it or somebody else, or I just caught on to myself, and I was like, whoa, wait a minute. It's
Yeah,
saying whenever they come, you rise. This is a law.
right.
And I
And
always,
in right, and in that law, there is nothing in there that says rise, rise up to the hoary head as long as he ain't wrong on something, or like there's no stipulations. It's no, 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 no. Get up off your behind and show that man honor, because 9 times out of 10, the elderly have learned more through their experiences than you've learned in the book.
Okay.
So, in the immortal words of baby Birdman, put some respect on that name.
Right. So
So
that leads into the into the first question. First question, and that is, let me get to it real quick, pull it up so people can see it when they come in. First question: is followership as important as leadership? We've been talking about it a little bit, a recap on some of the things that was said. We spoke on those that were that has a pedigree and still learning from their mistakes. We spoke on instances dealing with Isaiah 28, where it talks about, and Jeremiah when it talks about leadership and how they actually was doing that on purpose. Then we talked about Aharon when he was left by Moshe, and the overwhelming, I want to say, overwhelming pressure that was put on him by the rest of the Israelites, and that was the followership. So, with that being said, using that example or any other examples you might have, is followership as important as leadership?
absolutely, and it can be argued, and I'm not saying that this is actual facts, but it can be argued that followership is more important than leadership.
It's funny you said that. I actually put that in the YouTube description.
Oh, there you go. and my reasoning for that is this: being a leader requires followership.
That's right.
You need membership. Like, listen, if you have a camp and your camp has no members, then you're a leader of what? You're a chief of what? You're a priest of what? How can you be a priest and there is no one to officiate over priestly duties for the people? If there's no people in your circumference, then you're a priest of what? You're a chief of what? You're a more of what? So all of these titles that we have, they presuppose that there's going to be those that we're going to deal with and lead and bring them under a discipleship for the purpose of their education and edification. Okay. These titles presuppose that. So, but the integrity of a teacher, of a leader, whatever, all of these things are solely dependent on the followership, because the followers is what makes a congregation a congregation. Otherwise, it's just an educated dude talking into the wind.
That's right. And go ahead. Yeah. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I want to add too that any true leader always still has someone else that they're following in some fashion. You might have someone that's a chief elder or a chief like you or whatever, or a moreh, but you might have an elder that you still follow for instruction, for counsel. When you think of the literature, when you think of the melechim, the kings, when you think of even Moshe, he went to council. It was an elder that counseled him. You have the kings that had the prophets that counseled them. So they still had a sense of, even within that rulership and within that that leadership role, they had a sense of following for counsel, for information, to put things and make sure they was on point. So followership to me is as important as leadership, if not more important, because even the leaders have to follow in some fashion to maintain what it is they built or maintain what it is they're over. And that's just my
Absolutely.
thoughts on that. Mm-hmm.
No, and as far as I'm concerned, those are actual facts. And the funny thing is that when we talk about leadership, we're not, and, and we're gonna, for now, we're not even gonna talk about toxic. We're just gonna say leadership and followership. The
Okay.
funny thing about that is that about leadership and followership is that it's basically a chicken and egg scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Because because if we say the leader is more important than the followership, okay, cool. But the leader was once a follower.
That's right.
And the followers, what I'm saying, are going to become leaders. There's no way in this basically shows that one cannot exist without the other.
Mm-hmm.
Sheep without a shepherd are scattered and devoured by ravenous wolves. Shepherd with no sheep is a man just standing with a rod in his hand.
Right.
He has no purpose.
Yeah.
There's no purpose behind it. So you have no purpose. The leader has no purpose. And the followers have no what? Vision. There's a reason why. And I always found this interesting that we are, as a people, that we are referred to as the lost sheep. The lost sheep of the house of Israel. One of the things that we know about sheep is what? Sheep are partially blind. Like literally, they're partially blind. They don't see very well. Hence, why shepherds are necessary. And if you ever looked at the shepherd rod, it looks like a shape of a curved serpent, whatever. But the purpose of the curve was that when the sheep, when the sheep would go and they would go off track, off the path, the shepherd would take that hook and put it to the sheep's neck to pull them back on the path.
Right.
Before they go wandering off a cliff somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So it's interesting that we have that we're constantly referred to as the lost sheep of the house of Israel. Lost sheep, lost sheep, lost sheep. We consume lamb on the Passover. All of these motifs, these these typographies, all of these different concepts surrounding the sheep implies what? That there is a need for leadership. The sheep needs someone to give them vision, to give them a direction, but the leader or the shepherd needs the sheep because otherwise he has no purpose.
That's right.
Again, you're a more, but if there's no one for you to teach, then you're a more of what? Who are you teaching? If there's nobody there to teach, what are you?
Yeah. And then
yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then to think about it, it's like, these terms too, and it's crazy. Even within our culture, I hear a lot of people that I don't need no leader. The different terms they say. I don't. I'm not gonna get on that. But here's the thing, and I always say this: when it comes to our people, there is only one place, and maybe that's a fishbowl thing right here I'm about to say, but there is one place, I should say, or two maybe, actually, considering the topic I'm speaking on right now, and that's the home, where we don't like structure. Mm-hmm. And now what we're speaking on now is, this type of structure within this journey, this culture. But outside of it, yeah, we abide by those type of rules, those type of structures. And one example that I'm gonna use is before you become anything, before you become any profession, you're taught how to be that profession in some fashion. And what does that make you? A follower. It makes you a follower in what you're trying to obtain.
Those are fighting words right there.
That's what I'm saying. It makes you a follower in what you're trying to obtain. And there's nothing wrong with that, because it's building you up to one day become a leader in what you're trying to do as far as your profession.
but
And
that
even if
but
you're not a leader, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I'm about to say, even if you're not a leader in a sense over a multitude of people, it's still conditioning you in a good way to be a leader over in a small sense or scenario, and that's your family.
Yeah.
Cause you to have structure for your family and things of that nature. So it's nothing wrong with that. And I believe going into we're gonna go into we got two more questions, so I'm not even gonna go into this. Go ahead.
No, if you want to tackle it, tackle it.
No, I was about to say that the entitlement part we was talking about.
Hmm.
Um, if the vision is not sincere, if the intent is not sincere, um, then you tend to get this entitlement. You tend to get jealous. You tend to become toxic as a follower, spreading rumors and stuff like they was doing about Moshe. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
And I keep running back to that because I want to make sure people understand, all of this is the same. This way that we've
Right.
been is the same for a very long time. And I remember I was talking to my elder chief. I mean, not chief, I'm sorry. I'm speaking to you right now. More Shalim, well,
Right.
Chief Elder name actually, and I was talking about him to someone, and I'm like, look, I said, look, I don't have to agree fully on everything with Chief Elder Shalim or even Chief Zebulon Belewidekia, but they still are very important in my journey. They're still leaders in regards to my journey as well. So I'm still going to give them that honor no matter what. I'm not going to get jealous of the fact of whatever the case that might be. I'm not going to feel that I'm entitled, says, okay, yeah, now I'm this moral, whatever I become this and that. And I think that's the problem with our community and outside our community, to
Hmm.
where it's like we have this, we're only there for the moment, and then if we don't like it, we become a certain way and we remove ourselves. Hence, that's going back to being that toxic fellowship. You got to have within your head or your heart already that, you know what, no matter what, I like the integrity, I like the
Hmm.
purpose of this individual I'm learning from, following, uh, same path as direction I'm trying to go in, blah blah blah. I know that this person is, like you had said, even with pedigrees and stuff like that, you're gonna mess up things like that. But are you in for the long haul? Are you in a covenant? Are you going to formulate a covenant with them for the
For sure.
betterment of your journey, your life? And I think that a lot of people do not go into it like that, and that's what causes that toxic followership to kind of like, you know, seep in. So,
Absolutely. And before I touch on that, I want to go back very briefly to the point that you were making um about the issue that people have with being followers.
mhm.
And I think that concept, I don't know where it came from, but in the in the so-called African American community, that is a huge anecdote that they use, that they always say,
Yes,
like,
I know.
I mean, we teach our children this nonsense. And,
Yep.
and think about how insane the statement is. They say, don't be a follower, be a leader. Now, on the surface, you're like, well, yeah. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to be a follower, you want to be a leader. But then what happens when you become a leader? Are you still going to tell the people, don't be a follower?
Right.
No, the fact that, and so it creates this situation where you're being told not to be the very thing that would make you a great leader.
Okay.
Be
And
no
then
great,
you don't even they gotta learn to be a leader first.
right? Like,
And your parents can't teach you how to be a leader across the board. They could teach you how to be a leader in regards to integrity and honor and things like that, blah blah blah. But it's gonna be things that you might dive into unless you just gonna follow in the footsteps completely of your mom and dad and things like that. Okay, cool. But teaching that, and forgive me slightly for jumping in, but
mhm,
teaching that portion of, okay, don't be a follower, be a leader. You have to follow in order to become a leader, unless you're just pushed out there and you have no type of connection with anybody around you and things of that nature. then it's like, okay, maybe you're forced, but it's going to be a lot of mishaps. It's going to be a lot of failing. It's going to be all that. And last thing
Right.
I'm going to say, one thing one of my chief elder, he bring out is the purpose of a leader or elder is to what? Shorten your learning curve.
Actual fact. Actual fact.
Yes, sir.
And that, no, and that in itself is one of the more important elements. I don't know if did you fall off the camera?
No, I'm still there.
Oh, okay. But that's one of the more important elements, in this subject, because again, you're dealing with people who are trying to convince you to shun followership, but it is followership that makes leaders. If you ever look at, and again, just limiting it to the Hebrew Israelite paradigm, name whatever great leader in the Hebrew community, or all of the great
You
elders
already
in
know
Hebrew
where I'm
ever.
gonna go. You already know where I'm
Name,
about to go. Ben
right.
Ami.
Name whoever you want to name.
Okay.
Do a background check on them, on their
Mm-hmm.
pedigree, and what you will find is that they were great followers.
Okay.
Think about it, and you went straight to Ben Ami Ben
You
Israel,
know,
the
I,
late
I
great.
love what they did. Real quick, do you hear anything other than me speaking? You hear any background
No,
noise? No? Okay, cool.
brief, no, briefly I heard an echo, but then it just went away.
Okay, cool. Just want to make sure
Yeah,
I
go ahead.
turn on this air. It's got a little hot in here.
Yeah, no doubt. But yeah, but like even with the case of the late honorable Ben Ami Ben Israel, a lot of people only know Ben Ami Ben Israel from his platform as the leader of the kingdom of Yah over there in Dimona, Mispeh, Rama, and Arad, they have a few other areas over there, but that's all they know him. But when you go into the history of his movements, and I definitely, for the listeners or whoever will be viewing this later on, I highly recommend that you get. There's a book that community put out called "The Impregnable People." Please read that book because it gives you the backstory of Ben Ami and all of the elders that were moving at that time for the KOY. And what's beautiful about that book is that it shows you the time when Ben Ami was not the elder. He was not the leader of that movement. He was one of the young brothers who was sitting in the congregation, listening to the elder, listening to Eliyahu Bowie,
Okay.
listening to Prince Reuben, listening to all of these elders that were in Chicago in the early '60s. Benny Zakin was there as well. He was a young man. He was 21 years old, sitting in the congregation, listening, not trying to. No, he's listening,
Okay.
keeping his mouth shut, and he's listening and he's learning. And even when they started their movement out of America to go over to Liberia, he still wasn't the leader. The leader of that movement at that time was Dr. Shaliach Ben Yehuda.
Mm.
He was the actual elder. Ben Ami was like his young lieutenant.
Okay.
And Ben Ami had no problem with that. He had no problem whatsoever. Why? Because the men that he learned under were great men. They were men of vision. They were men of vision. They were men of purpose. So he had no problem with it. And then they elevated him. So then he became a leader in the community. And then eventually they had I think in I believe it was 1972, I believe. They had what they refer to as the consolidation of power, where they all agreed, all of the elders agreed that Ben Ami would become the leader. So you
Mm.
had leaders who stepped down and say, you know what? You are the future.
Yeah.
You're the future. And they elevated him.
They gave him a dream team moment.
Absolutely.
I saw the video where Michael Jordan and them was playing, the full court, Charles Barkley, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird, and all them. They said once he did what he did to Magic, they passed the baton. It was like, here you go. Yeah, he's a new face.
No, absolutely. And that's respect. You know what I'm saying, on the side of leadership, because they're like, because some leaders could just be like, nah, I'm still a leader.
Yeah.
But the honor, to show you the honor that these elders were dealing with, that Dr. Shaliak Ben Yehuda, who was the default, he was the de facto leader of that movement. When before they were called Kingdom of Yah, they were called the original Israelite nation. And he was the de facto leader.
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of like, if you subscribe to the New Testament, very similar to the John the Baptist and Yeshua Christ scenario, where John the Baptist was clearly that guy. He was clearly the guy.
Mm-hmm.
And then he said, no, I must decrease and you must increase.
Mm-hmm.
No ego involved. But you see, because you can see, if you're a leader and you're doing your job right, you're supposed to have men in your ranks that is going to take your position.
Yeah.
And not take it in a negative way, but to say, hey, listen, I'm not going to live forever. At least not on this planet, at least not in this world. Whatever. I'm not going to live forever.
That's right.
So you need someone who is being raised up for the purpose of making a smooth transition into that leadership role. And then the leader, the former leader, can kind of fall back a little bit and say, okay, while you're increasing, he's decreasing. And it doesn't decrease his value as an elder. It just means that, I've done my job.
That's right.
I've done my job, and my followers, my students, they are ready to put that work in now.
And this is like the process. This is like a universal process. I think that was extracted from the cultures of ancient Near East, more specifically our culture, I should say. And this has been something that works for any establishment, any organization. This is known to happen. Now, there are a few, of course, that do what you just said, don't want to pass the baton. But for the most part, this is how it goes. And I think that, once we realize that, once people realize the importance of it, and we just fight against the buffoonery within it, because that's what a lot of people are not wanting to follow anything because of the fishbowl, I should say, because a lot of them haven't even been in camps. I know I wasn't technically. I mean, IOG is, but it's a little different, a little more modern, I guess, or not modern. That's a wrong choice of words, but just a little different. It's not like the camps that I'm seeing. The camps like you came from, the other camps. I mean, it's a camp. It's just a little more. I don't even know what to use, because it's not a shot. I'll take my head off the brother boy. It was through IOG that got me to where I'm at right now, and meeting you and meeting my chief elder, More Shalem. So I always give honor there. So this is not a shot, of course, to IOG. I love IOG, but I just don't know where to call. Just a Knesset, I guess. Just call it Knesset.
Congregation.
Congregation. There you go.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
So you want to the point I'm basically making is that a lot of people, they run from that. I'll be seeing a lot of people on Facebook and even people I met in person, but more so Facebook, and they speak so negatively about it. And I'm like, okay, cool. So if I take something away from what you are saying, okay, but what are you doing then? If you are complaining about this, what are you doing? And guess what? You don't know how to do it because you was not a real follower.
Chicken and egg.
Full circle. You don't know what to do or what to change in this stuff that you don't like, because you wasn't a real follower. Sure, you was a part of this congregation. Sure, you was a part of whatever, but were you really a follower? Like, was you really in it? Were you like the Ben Ami? Were you like the Yehoshua Joshua to Moshe? Were you like the outside of the Hebrew community, I'm gonna say this, the Malcolm X to Muhammad. Were you like that? If you weren't, it's going to be hard for you to know how to lead and be a proficient and a successful leader when dealing with multiple people and individuals. That's just my take on that.
No, and absolutely, bro. I mean, one of the problems that and full circle again, it goes back to that sense of entitlement, because the individuals, they're in these congregations, they're in these Knesset, they're in these various organizational settings. They're there not to help build up. They're there to extract. They're not there to put anything in. They're there to extract from. And see, and being that we're talking about, what is toxic followership, I wanted to share a quick excerpt out of a book that I wrote called The Kagai Principle, that deals with the four planks.
Shameless plug. No, play.
Yeah, that was very shameful. No, yeah. I have no shame.
Go ahead and let them know, man. His literature is fire. Trust me.
But the four specific signs of toxic followership, and you can always pick this up when you're having conversations with prospective students. There's four of these, four signs or planks. The first one, and I'm just going to read it as I wrote it. Lack of discernment. This is one of the first things, and this goes back to competency. What we always talk about Hebraic competency, the importance of competency. We all, you and I, we talk about this profusely. Mm-hmm. But the first sign of toxic followership in a person is lack of discernment. Potential followers come into a camp congregation with the intent of, quote unquote, doing what the elders instruct them to do, without questioning the ethics or accuracy of said instructions. They are often enamored with the charisma of the elder and seek to show themselves as a loyal follower, even to the point of agreeing with actions that are clearly against Torah or Hebraic principles. They do not understand that being blindly loyal to their elder not only does them harm from an integrity standpoint, but also creates an environment of respect of persons, where the leader begins to feel that they are above and beyond rebuke or critique. This is one of the first, well, for the sake of the literature, the first stage of toxic followership. These are basically individuals who are basically yes men.
Okay.
So an elder or a teacher, he could be off on something, and maybe not. He doesn't even realize he's off, but he's speaking something that's maybe not accurate. But the followers, because they want to show loyalty, they will allow that elder to speak what he's speaking, and go to the extent of actually repeating and pushing these doctrines forward, knowing very well that they never actually did the research to verify if what the elder is saying, is accurate or not. I'm gonna give you a quick example of this,
real quick,
to show you how.
Hold that thought to make a point that you brought out too. You said that the elder might not even recognize that he's doing it. I think that's a portion of toxic followership too. Like, you might see it and you don't present it to the elder. He might not know. You know what I'm saying? So by just being a yes man, that's toxic in itself. You need to voice. And then you're adding to the cause of them not wanting to be around when the elder probably is sincere and it's intent as well, but he might just not know. So, go ahead. I just wanted to throw that in there when you said that.
Oh, absolutely. And that's actually covered in the third sign. But we're going to bang that as well. So yeah, the first one is lack of discernment, that these individuals, they're coming in, and because they're so intent on being yes men, and not yes men necessarily as a bad thing in the beginning, because again, you're coming in, you want to show your teacher or your elder or your chief or your more or whatever that hey, I'm here I'm here to put in work. So
Okay.
they're trying to show, but they're doing it without doing the knowledge themselves, without looking at these things and saying, okay, I know that elder said XYZ. I know Maurice Shema said this, or I know Chief Zebulon said this, or whatever. But you know what? Let me go ahead and go back and just check this out real quick. Let me go research this little whatever, just to make sure so that I know
Mm-hmm.
for me. Then I
Yeah.
can speak whatever the elder speaking. Now I can speak it in all truthfulness. But when you don't, but when you lack discernment, these things are you're unable to do these things, and it's a complete disaster going forward.
Okay.
So the second one, and keep in mind that last statement, that they don't understand that being blindly loyal to their elder not only does them harm from an integrity standpoint, but also creates an environment of respect of persons where the
Mm.
leader begins to feel that they are above and beyond rebuke or critique because no one's questioning them. No
Right.
one's saying, oh, excuse me, select the elder, or Zaquain or Roche or More or so on and so forth, or Cohen. I have a question about that. I was listening to what you were saying, and so my question is this: blah blah blah. Can you give can you go a little bit deeper on this? That's all. It's not about getting at the elder. It's like saying, no, listen, I want you to explain it to me. But when we don't do this to our elders, it builds up a natural feeling of I'm beyond reproach. Why? Because hey, if what I was saying was wrong, somebody would have checked me on it.
I just
But
said
ain't
about it.
nobody
Yep.
checking me on it.
Yep.
So I must be that dude.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where the arrogance comes in. So the toxic followership feeds into it almost creates toxic leadership. And then the
Yeah.
toxic leadership feeds back into the follower. It's again chicken and egg. So the second sign is lack of labor. This is the second sign of toxic followership. And it says many Hebrews come into the camps with the expectation of receiving truth as opposed to earning the truth.
Mm.
Let me read that again. Many Hebrews come into camps with the expectation of receiving the truth as opposed to earning the truth. Nothing worth having ever comes to you free, and this includes knowledge of truth. Just as our elders had to labor for years and endure rites of passage for the privilege of possessing the truth, the same should apply to the current generation. A critical part of earning this truth is the labor one puts in, which includes becoming active in the building up of a camp congregation. However, those who are of the toxic followership only see their place in the camp as that of a reaper,
Mm.
always extracting and never planting. They can visualize themselves as leaders, but can never fathom partaking in the labor it takes to achieve such title of office. This attitude creates an atmosphere of laziness and slothfulness in the camp, which can affect the overall performance of other members and students.
Okay.
So you see this profusely on Facebook. Most of the people that you see on Facebook, they are extractors. They're not planters. A few years ago, I actually put up a post where I said that that your importance as a leader, teacher, or whatever it only lasts as long as the individuals, the so-called followers, need you. The moment that they've gotten whatever they can get from you, knowledge-wise or whatever like that,
Yeah.
they move on. They keep it moving because they don't care about you. They're not there for the camaraderie. They're not there for the brotherhood. They're not there to build anything up. They're there to get information and keep it moving.
Yeah.
So it ain't even about you. They don't care. Um, and that's kind of leading to the next one, whatever. But yeah, it creates this atmosphere of laziness and slothfulness, so that when if nobody is putting in work and everybody is just extracting, this is why you start seeing um, very high turnovers in camps where people are leaving by the droves, and then people are coming in by the droves and leaving and whatever, like, because you realize that it's not even about building of a camp. It's about what can I get out of here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that goes into the going back full circle to the beginning when I brought out where there's no vision, the people perish. I believe wholeheartedly, I said it before, that the follower has to have a vision as well. They have to have a vision as well. And if they don't, you know, that picture that I have for this particular show, I guess you could say, it shows it's a building, and that building is like dismantled, like halfway off. I don't know if you saw the picture, but you know, without both having or agreeing, you know,
Right.
what's the scripture of two not agree? uh, you know, so if they don't agree with this, you know, it's not going to stand. You know, it's not going to stand. You know, and with that being said, you know, that goes into now we actually also was doing a second question. I'm sitting up and listening. I'm like, oh, we actually talking about the second question already. What is
Right,
toxic
right. Well, I
followership?
mean, yeah, I mean a lot of
Yeah,
overlapping, but that's cool. You know,
yeah.
we you know,
Yes, sir. What is toxic followership is the next question. I mean, you spoke on it a lot. You know, you brought out some things from the Chagai principles. Get that book. People get that book. Want to let them know where they can get it from, Chief.
okay. Well, you can actually right now. I mean, you can get it on Amazon. You know,
Mhm.
it's definitely on Amazon. Or if you want to support it directly, you can go to Etsy. What we'll do is we'll leave a link in the description on the video on
Okay.
YouTube. Feel free to go and pick it up. I think you'll enjoy it. You know, but this is these issues are important because the very thing that we're listen, we're in 2021 and we are witnessing and have been witnessing the destruction of the Hebrew Israelite paradigm.
Yeah.
One of the most important parts of the Hebrew Israelite paradigm is community. Now, I'm not saying that community is not existent because again, you know, we're only dealing with the fishbowl, you know what I'm saying? Because
Mhm.
outside of social media, these things are still being done. There are still camps that are still going, that are still functioning the way that the great elders that came before us instituted. So, but we're not talking about, we're talking about those who have established their one and only home online. Uh, Facebook has become their camp. Twitter has become their camp. Instagram has become their camp. This is where they're doing all of their quote unquote camp movements.
Did
So
I
we're in a
spell that right?
time, huh?
Let me know if I spelled that right when it comes back across. I wrote it on the screen, so when people are watching it or checking it out, they'll know where to get it. Is it with it KG?
Yep, that's it. Yep,
Okay, cool.
the Kai guy principle. Yeah. So
Principal or principles?
not the Kai guy principle, singular.
Okay, my bad. Let
Yeah,
me
it's all
go
good.
ahead and
But
fix that. Go ahead though.
right, but so I mean, it's you know, the funny thing is, it goes right into the third sign that we're talking about, and that is lack of truthfulness. In any scenario, honesty is always the righteous path to take, at least in the long term. This is indeed the case when they come under the tutelage of a teacher or leader. However, there are students who operate in a spirit of untruthfulness and deception for reasons similar to those covered in the lack of discernment principle above. The leader can be disseminating knowledge or doctrine that the student knows to be questionable, yet because of their respect for that leader, they will allow the misinformation to continue being taught. They will not even consider going to the leader in private, away from public exposure, and express their sentiment concerning the matter.
Okay.
This is especially true when there are monetary and hierarchical benefits for turning the blind eye.
Mm.
Let me read it again. This is especially true when there are monetary and hierarchical benefits for turning a blind eye to the doctrines and conduct that can erode the integrity of a camp. Thus, the follower student becomes an active participant in the development of egotism in the leader and the eventual splintering of the camp among those who may not agree with the questionable doctrine or activity. So in this particular sign, it's very clear. What happens is you have you hear your elder, he's teaching something that you feel like, I don't know if that's an agreement with the text. I don't know if that's agreement with, in the context or whatever. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you might be in a situation where that elder or that chief or that moray or whatever, or that prince or priest might be in the process of making you, the chief moray of the camp.
So you're gonna let it slide so you can get that position.
Right, because right, and it starts off innocently, because you're like, well, yeah, it's just like politics. It's like a senator, and I'm not going to mention this particular senator's name. It's like a senator from Chicago who eventually runs for president, and in his mind, as a senator, he's thinking, I'm gonna tolerate certain things because I know once I get into office, I can change things from the inside. I can make those changes.
Yeah.
So they'll let certain things slide so that they can get in the position of leadership. Then they can change it from the inside. But you know what ends up happening? They never change.
Yeah.
Because once you get in,
deep.
right, there's a whole movie about that.
In too deep. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, you know what I'm saying? So, you're Omar Epps and the elder is LL. It's God. So you're not going to change anything from the inside. Why? Because now you have become part and parcel. You're now in the hierarchy, and there's benefits. Listen, just like in any organization, it's just like in at an organization that you might work at. You get you rise up the ranks. Not only do you get a higher title, but what else they give you? They give you
higher pay.
Right. You get more money.
Mm-hmm.
You get that extra bread. So you get all this money, and you got this title. You got the, you got the beautiful parking spot in front of the, in front of the corporate office or whatever. Do you really want to rock the boat now?
Right.
You don't really want to rock the boat, so you're gonna let certain things just slide. You're gonna let it slide because you're thinking, well, it's really not that important. It's not a big deal.
Right.
But those little slides turn into boulders. You know what I'm saying? And it starts rolling downhill, and it ends up destroying everything. So you become not only a yes man, but you've already created a spirit in that camp that for the right price. And I use the example from back in the 80s in WWF wrestling. Ted DiBiase, the $1 Million Man, his favorite catchphrase was what? Everybody he was like, everything and everyone has a price for the $1 Million Man. Yeah. Everybody has a price. But so how much is it going to cost you to play ball? And when students and followers are pushing that, it feeds into the ego of the elder. So now the elder's thinking like, yo, I'm not. If anybody is thinking about challenging me on this and this and that, all I got to do is make them a captain, and that shuts it down. Or I make them a priest. Or I make you you're now an 8-shield general.
Mm-hmm. And see, that's what goes into the that goes back into that integrity, man. I think that I know that for this whole dynamic, the leadership, the followership to thrive, it has to be integrity and good character. So the whole toxic followership, a lot of that is due to, going back again, integrity and your character. Are you just staying here for a second? Is it temporary? Are you doing this? Is this really within your heart or within your mind to really do it? And I believe that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing. Those people that you talk about that'll be there for a season and then they leave, they're just extracting that information. Their intent is not there. It's not true. Now, granted, I know it's levels. It's levels, as to those that might really want to serve to a different type of capacity, and it might be some that their level is a little, lower than uh, those that's more adamant and trying to really serve the people. So I get all of that too, but
Yeah.
I don't deem those people that I'm speaking of with a lower, adamant, being in a lower sense or whatnot. I don't view them as their intent being, not genuine. Maybe probably
Mhm.
lazy. I don't know, but but the toxic followership, I believe that we hit on a lot of different things that can bring out that meaning of what it really is. A lot of different scenarios as to what leads to it. You brought out some different points within the Chagai principles that y'all need to make sure y'all check out on Etsy and Amazon. Look up Zebulon, Belewi Hadekia. Almost rhymed too. But let's go
Yeah,
ahead
right.
and go to the third question, man.
Yeah.
Um,
Oh, and before we touch that, let me just give the fourth and final one.
it's four. Okay,
Sign.
I thought you said
Yeah,
three for some reason. Okay.
okay. Yeah, yeah. And the final one, and this is pretty much probably maybe uh probably the most popular of the signs, because I've actually promoted this concept numerous times on different platforms, and that is the Halle Berry syndrome.
Ah.
Many followers and students, they have this syndrome, and not necessarily, and I don't say that in a bad way, just saying that many of them are coming in with this already, you know already already kind of like pre-programmed in their head. So it goes like this: the Halle Berry syndrome. And this is the same example I gave with the employee situation. I said, try to imagine yourself as an employer, and you're conducting interviews for an opening in your company. A potential employee walks in, hands you an application and resume, and sits down to be interviewed. You ask the person about their work history, and much to your chagrin, they begin a long diatribe against all of their former employers. Every one of their past employers are described in negative terms, and none of them are listed as references.
Mm.
Obviously, you are likely not to hire this person, since it seems improbable that these former employers could all be bad. The problem must be with the interviewee, and that very issue gives you an insight into what you can expect with this person.
Mm-hmm.
This example certainly applies to the prospective student follower who has been a member of other camps and is now attempting to gain membership with a new one. They come into a camp and express their disdain for all the other previous camps they've had dealings with, and attempt to convince the new elder that, quote, things will be very different here. But the prospective student eventually creates another reason to turn against the current eldership, and ultimately influences other student members to rebel as well, all the while placing the blame on the eldership and never considering that they themselves may be the problem. This is what I refer to as the Halle Berry syndrome, where the famous actress has gone through nearly 12 relationships in the past 30 years. All of the relationships ended the same way: her making accusations of abuse, infidelity, sex addiction, etc., on the part of the men. Yet after all of these failed relationships, people began to realize that Halle must be the problem. While not suggesting that the men were necessarily innocent of the accusations, people started to acknowledge that there was something about Halle that seemed to attract the same type of, quote, abusive, deadbeat men over and over again. These type of people will project their inner demons and insecurities onto others, and will never come to admit that they are the true source of their failures. Unfortunately, camp leaders have a tendency to overlook this red flag, probably distracted by the prospect of increasing their membership numbers. This is what many of the followers that we're talking about, in toxic followership, many of them come in with this attitude of, and we hear it all day. You meet some Hebrews, they never have anything good to say about any camp. Like,
Yeah.
all camps are wicked. All
Mm-hmm.
camps are wicked. All camps are wicked. But so then it's like, well, how many camps have you been to? Oh,
Right.
well, two. Oh, so you've been to two camps. but all camps are wicked. And this is when, again, why I believe in the Hebrew community, if there was a much higher and thorough level of unity in our community, as far as being able to network, for, all camps being able to network,
Right.
instituting Hebrew Israelite, maybe I shouldn't even say this or whatever, but Hebrew Israelite identification cards where you can't move throughout the community unless they know who you are.
Right.
And if you come to a camp and you're trying to gain membership, it should be just like any other job interview where I need references. I need to be able to contact your former camp leaders, your former elder, your former moray, whatever, because I want to know what they think of you.
Right.
Because you've already told me what you think of them. I want to hear from their mouths. And that's when you get a chance to see what you can expect from this individual when they come into your camp, because a person can't be going to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 camps and they're all wrong, but they've done nothing wrong. All the camps are wrong.
We'll definitely need, because I believe that's a good idea. Will it happen? We don't know. But that'll definitely be something good. I think the only maybe not issue with that, but lack of a better word, issue with that is, will those camp leaders or Hebrew communities have integrity enough to be truthful? Because sometimes you have some that, and I'm not gonna say all because I don't know all, but how some people they don't want you to, okay, you ain't gonna be here, I'm gonna make sure you messed up somewhere else, and you ask them that question. So we'll need to make sure, if there was something that we was to do or was to be able to do, that those leaders had integrity, good character, to be like, hey, yeah, it didn't work out here. This person was a good, decent individual. They did this X, Y, and Z. It just didn't work out here. So just wanted to let you know that if we could get some people that can do that, then it'll work. That's something to we'd have to consider or think about, because it is some people out there, man, that they'll sit up here and, just try to, oh, you left? Okay. I'm gonna make sure your name is horrible. And I'm not even talking about camps, I'm just talking about people in general.
No, right, right.
That goes into the toxic followership or toxic leadership, as I said before, integrity and good character. So
no doubt. All of that requires integrity. Like any scenario that we are proposing on this platform, it kind of presupposes he break decorum, he break integrity. It kind of presupposes it. Hopefully, that's what we're all dealing with. But
okay. All right. Let's So the last question is, what are some examples of toxic followership in the so-called? I had put so-called Black community today because I was trying to make it broad, but we've been talking about the Hebrew community mostly, so we could just speak on that. But we have actually brought some points out about it. But if you have any extra for this question, like I said, we've been tackling these questions as we went. But what are some examples of toxic followership in the so-called Black or Hebrew community today? Now, this doesn't necessarily have to be, I guess you could say, within Knesset or camps. This also could be, in regards to relationships. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And the only reason I want to bring that point out is because the camps are formed from individuals that came from relationships, and now when you come into this camp, this structure, this standard that's needs to be in place. So what are some examples to where this standard or this structure wasn't in place and it took place within our community? Do you see that happening often in the years that you've been doing it, or in this particular journey? Is it something that is big, or we see that a lot? Is that causing any resistance of us progressing in this walk? I'm just throwing out stuff right now in regards to this question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you see it as much in real life as we see it play out on social media. Social media is an
Right.
entirely different universe. It's a, you know, it's a, for those who are into sci-fi, it's a parallel universe. It's not even here with us. It's just something completely different. Um,
Mhm.
but in the real life, and I'll give you this example. I mean, and normally I wouldn't get into this because it's, because it kind of puts a certain camp. It kind of specifies a certain camp, but because it's already common, well, among those who are of certain age, it's already common knowledge. So I'm not like spilling the beans on something.
Okay.
Um, and I've used this example on a couple of occasions because it was like one of the most heartbreaking scenarios, man. That goes to toxic leadership and toxic followership kind of intermingling together, um, and that's pertaining to the first incarnation of the ISUPK.
Mm.
Um, there was a split that happened in the original ISUPK. I'm not going to get into the politics of that split, but needless to say, a split occurred. Those who left with the original leader, they end up forming House of David. Um, very good camp, brothers. But anyway, very excellent camp, and the brothers who were there, um, and the those who remained in ISUBK, there was a name change. It
Hmm.
was no longer ISUBK; it was ICUPK. Israeli Church of Universal Practical Knowledge. Now, we're talking like around 1995, 96, 97. They're now ICUPK.
Hmm.
And one of the things that began to develop with the ICUPK in towards the late 90s was they began to really push the a particular doctrine about the return of Christ. They were no longer teaching it in the sense of, hey, one day, we're living in the last days, but one day, Christ is going to come. He's coming back in the clouds. He's going to rain down fire and brimstone on the white man, and you're going to restore Israel to their greatness, whatever. It was no longer a general timeline. Now they were getting very specific. They were like 2000, in the year 2000,
Mm.
2000, it's going down. Christ is coming. He's coming back. And the elders, and again, the motive behind why they were pushing this, I'm not really sure. And again, since I wasn't an insider at that point. There's certain things I just can't speak on
Right.
because it would be hearsay. But whatever the reason for that particular push, they were getting very ardent about it. They developed a calendar, and they even had a doctrine based on certain New Testament scripts where it said, "Hey, Christ is coming back January 1st, 2000, and here's the proof." The proof was, I can't recall the actual script offhand, but it's the script. I believe it's in the Gospel of Matthew, and I think it might even be in Luke. But where it says, when they were talking about the last days, there's a statement that's attributed. These are words that are attributed to Yeshua/Christ, Yahweh, whatever. That says, pray that your journey is not in the winter or on the Sabbath day, on the Shabbat day, for then these things are going to happen. So
Okay.
what the elders at that time did was they said, well, January 1st is in the winter, obviously, and it just so happens that January 1st was on a Saturday. So it's in the winter and on the Sabbath, it's a done deal.
Right.
Christ is coming. And so many people at that point that was directly involved in that camp, they they put everything on that teaching. Brother, you have brothers and sisters that were quitting their jobs. Now we're like October, November, December of 1999, brothers and sisters was quitting their jobs. They walked right into their supervisor and saying, "F you, Esau, I'm out of here," whatever like that. They
Wow.
cashing out. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? They cashing out on their bank accounts. They taking all their money out. They spending it and doing whatever they can because none of this is going to matter anyway. January 1st, you know what I'm saying? They don't, you know, they just living it up because it's like Prince said, party like it's 1999. They getting it in because they know that when January 1st comes, Esau is going to go into captivity. White man is going to be our slaves. They're going to work very hard, whatever like that, in slavery. They'll get the Sabbath day off. Like one brother said, we're going to chain Esau to a pipe or a pole on the Sabbath, you know what I'm saying, to make sure that they rest, whatever. I mean, there was a whole elaborate understanding of this event. And brother, like I said, brothers, and as the time was moving, and listen, everybody thought something was going to happen in the year 2000. Even if you weren't a Hebrew Israelite, 2000 was just that year that you're like, I don't know what's going to happen, but something's going down.
Right.
So, lo and behold, for those who didn't figure it out, January 1st comes around and
nothing happened.
Christ doesn't return. At that time, it was referred to as, it was called the big letdown. Like it was such a horrible situation. You have brothers and sisters who now they wake up January 1st, 2000, and Christ has not cracked the sky. He is not in the clouds. Esau, the so-called white man, is not in captivity. He's still ruling the damn earth.
And now these brothers and sisters and took all their money out and all that stuff, huh? That's
right.
Crazy.
These brothers and sisters got to now figure out, well, what are we gonna do? Because we have no money. I don't know. Already told the damn white man at my job to go screw himself. You know what I'm saying? Yahweh's coming to destroy him anyway. So like, what do? You've already, you haven't been paying your mortgage, so you know what I'm saying, your house is taken away. I mean, all of these things were unfolding in the aftermath of January 1st. Brothers and sisters walking away from the truth altogether. Like straight up. I had a brother who told me straight up and down after that, was like, yo, I don't deal with the Israelite thing anymore.
Wow.
Because it was so, because everything was hinged on Yahweh, Christ, whatever, Yeshua coming back. Everything was hinged on that. Everything. And when it didn't happen, it caused such a ripple effect. It was so bad that even Israelites who were not New Testament followers felt bad. Like it wasn't a time for joy. Like, yeah, see, we told you your Christ ain't come. It was like, because we're looking at our brothers and sisters like, damn, yo.
Yeah, they felt bad for New Testament people leaving.
Because these are still our people. These are our people. And you see your people hurting. You see your people walking around not knowing what to do with themselves because they're like, yo, my entire faith, everything that I was doing was based on the belief that Christ was coming to save us out of this hellhole that we live in. And now to wake up the next day and to realize that hell is going to continue.
I might as well live my life.
Right.
That's what people thinking. And also, I don't know, man. Somebody asked a question too. They said, didn't GMS derive from that camp also?
Yeah, GMS, the actual leader. I don't know about the other sub leaders, but I know that General Tahar, he is an actual original member of the first ISUPK. He was actually, if I remember correctly, he was the reader for Chief High Priest Ariyah in the early mid 80s. He was actually there, like he was an, you know what I'm saying? So he has the pedigree. So GMS came from that family tree, although they didn't really stick to a lot of the principles of the original ISUPK. They kind of started developing some other things, which we're not going to touch on, whatever. But yeah, but genealogically speaking, yes, GMS comes out of the original ISUPK. the ISUPK of the 1980s. But just to wrap up the point about the big letdown, and why the whole toxic followership issue came, was after all this now happens. ICUPK, who at that point they made another name change once 2000 came in and things didn't look, the situation got sour. They changed from ICUPK and they became there was another name. I don't want to say the Holy Conception Unit, but it was a name that they had, and it was like leading into what eventually became ICOGIC, which with Tazadakia, the Comforter, or whatever. This was what ISUPK became. It was ISUPK, then ICUPK, then it became I have to look at my old flyers or whatever down here, but I believe for a short period of time, they were called the Holy Conception Unit. And then from there, they became ICOGIC, Israelite Church of God in Jesus Christ or whatever. But in those months, in the spring of 2000, that particular camp released a document entitled 2000, What Happened? I mean, because they got to address it. I mean, you got to say something. And and I wish I would have actually pulled the flyer out, because I actually read the response. But I remember, for the most part, the response was basically, they said Christ. Everybody was like Christ was expected. Many of us expected Christ to return. And although he did not return, much kudos to those who still remain. So of course they're acknowledging the fact that many brothers and sisters, they just, I mean, and they didn't even go to another camp. Many of them just said, I'm just done with this. Many of them went back into the church, into the Christian church.
Oh, wow.
I actually, a few brothers who I was very close with, in a certain place, a certain area that I was at in the late 90s, they went straight back to Christianity, like straight back. Eating pork, shrimp, they just buck wild. But so the camp had to address these issues. So their response, I thought, was very interesting. They said, many of us were, it was like many people were surprised and what was the word that they used? Disappointed by Christ not returning. He say, she say, but what does the Bible say? Now, this is where it gets crazy. They said they kind of put the fault onto the followers by saying, listen, does not the scriptures say no man knoweth that day? Not the angels, not even the Son.
Right.
And they're correct. But come on now. Because if that's correct, then why didn't you tell them that in 1999?
Right.
That no man knoweth that day, not the angels nor the Son, only the Father. And so their response was not to say, hey, we thought we thought Christ was coming back. We were wrong. We misinterpreted certain texts, certain scripts, and then try to make some type of,
right,
some type of, reparations with the people that, that were following us. You got to, so instead of doing that, they just simply said, hey, you guys, if you guys were reading your scriptures, you wouldn't have believed this. Now, this is a mixture of toxic followership and toxic leadership, because the toxic leadership part is obvious,
right?
Because that's madness to say that, hey, you should have been researching this. Like, no, that's what I pay you tithes for. You're supposed to research it because that's what I pay you for. You're a priest, right? Well, you're taking my money. But even in that madness, there's still an element of validity to what those elders are saying, and that is what? You should have been reading and researching.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the motive behind them telling them that wasn't a good motive. Their motive was to try to, try to
Push it off
exonerate
them.
themselves.
Right. Yep.
So their motive was wrong. But what they're saying is actually true. And this goes right back to what we were talking about with the toxic followership, that you're supposed to go and read behind your elder. If your elder's telling you A, B, and C, okay, no doubt. All praise to the Most High. But let me go hit the book also.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what all the flyers are for. I got all these flyers. I got all these precepts. Well, let me go and hit these things up. But this is an example of how toxic followership and toxic leadership feeds each other. And this was one of that was like one of the most horrible examples. And I bring that up just to show that what we thought was a one-off situation with the 2000 thing, you find that regularly happening on social media. It happens all the time.
All the time.
On social media. In the real world, that was just a one-off situation. It was like, oh man, the big letdown, oh, whatever like that. And that's why most camps, they no longer give you dates about the end of this and whatever. They'll just say, we live in the last days. And they leave it as that.
Right.
Because nobody wants that. Nobody wants that smoke anymore. Like, no, I ain't playing with dates anymore. I ain't playing with, no, I ain't with that. Because we saw what happened. So people avoid it. But again, that's because you had physical camps. With physical camps, you can't afford to lose followers, especially if you're a camp that accepts tithes. Tithes keeps the lights on.
Yeah.
It keeps the physical camp going. So you can't afford to lose your followers. So now people will be more circumspect in the things that they're saying because they don't want people to leave. But on social media, it doesn't matter because you don't have a physical building to keep up. All you have to do is run a Facebook page. It doesn't. So there's a certain freedom now that people have to say whatever they want to say and don't have to worry about the repercussions of what they say.
Yeah. Yeah. And it goes back to what you said earlier, flipping it back to the followers' point of view. It's like, it's like they'll extract what they can from you and they out. It's no commitment. It's no, in my opinion, no true sincere intent. But then you have, when you look at the leadership portion of it, it's like, just trying to get my followership game up, subscribers and likes and things like that. So the whole toxic followership, and just to tie all this back together, man. And I'm gonna come back full circle, like I said. It's that where there's no vision, the people perish. When there's no vision, the people perish. There has to be a vision with the followers and the leaders. I can't express that enough because it's essentially a team. It's essentially a team, man. And with removing the dogma out of it, removing just doctrines out of it, if we could get into a realm to where we're looking at it from a community standpoint, I think it would thrive a little more, but everything is individuality today. So, that kind of bleeds into the toxic followership as well. It's just so many angles you could go with this. So, last thing I say in regards to this is it's not just on the leaders. At the end of the day, I'll look at it like a 51-49 thing, because that's the same thing it is in the actual home for wife and husband. I believe that leadership follower is a 51-49 because, like you said, if there's no followers, then what are you the leader of? So you need that 49% of the thing. I'm just taking from what you had brought out one day when we were speaking about man or woman, and I'm applying it to this. It's a 49-51. So in order for you can't push it on the leaders. Is basically all I'm saying. You have to take responsibility to the fact that it's not going well also with yourself too, especially if you have a good leader or a good elder and you know that they're sincere and their integrity and character is good, and they might be making a mistake on something. It's your job as the follower within that Knesset or within that congregational camp to take them to the side and just speak with them. With that, I yield on this, man. This was a good topic. I think it's a needed topic. I think this is something that probably needs to really be pushed out there more. Will people listen? It's my hope that they do, and maybe it can help change, their perspective on, Israel as a whole and coming together as a thriving and progressing camp. Anything you got to say on the closing out on the topic, Chief?
Yeah, indeed. And the one thing that I don't want, and obviously we don't want, but the one thing I don't want people to take away from this dialogue is this is in no way a way to exonerate faulty leadership.
Okay.
If you're a leader and you have done or have spoken things that have jacked up your members, no, there's no exoneration for you. But what we are doing though with this dialogue is to say that, like, well, let me not go into that. I was about to go into the gender issues, but just to say that accountability goes both ways.
Okay.
If the leaders have to be accountable for what they are speaking to the followers have to be accountable to what they're speaking into the leaders, because the leaders can only do and can only get away with the things that the congregation allows. Because if the congregation was really against these faulty things, that whatever, why don't they leave? So you're speaking against these things, but you are part and parcel of the destruction of this particular of your camp, because the leader is now in his ego, because you have basically fed him the idea that, hey, as long as you give me a title, you can teach whatever you want to teach.
Right.
Just give me a title. Let me get a piece of those tithes. You know what I'm saying? And now you're able to look past certain things. So no, leadership, toxic leadership is real. We've seen toxic leadership, but we have not spoken about toxic followership, and toxic followership is way more prominent than toxic leadership, because in a camp there may be only one leader, but there's hundreds of followers.
Okay.
And briefly and real quick, what I wanted to just real quick speak on is about even another example of Moshe. When the children of Israel was going buck wild in the wilderness, they were in the wrong. They were wilding out. Moshe, as the leader, stepped in and was like, "Listen, told the Most High, don't do this. Don't destroy the people. Let me take that. Let me take the blame for that. I'll hold their sins. I'll be responsible for their sins." What did the Most High tell him? Said, no. The soul that sins, basically, no, they are going to pay for their evil. I'm not going to kill you because of their doings. They're the ones who are evil. So what does this imply? That no, it's because some people will try to say, yeah, well, if the camp is wicked and evil, whatever like that, it's the fault of the leader.
True.
Not really. Not really. It's, you know what I'm saying, that's a scapegoat as well. You're scapegoating. Because the followers, you have to explain why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay.
He could be saying whatever he's saying. He'll in the case of Moshe, if Moshe was wrong, the Most High would have checked him as well, like he checked him with the rock of Meribah situation, the rock of Meribah, where it was like, no, you played yourself. Now you're not going to go into the land.
Right.
But in that situation where Moshe was told the Most High that he let me be blotted out of your book for their sins. And he says, no, that's not how we get down here.
Mm-hmm.
They are off. So they have to hold that. And so it always goes back to accountability. And every show that we do and every show that we've done in the past with love language or whatever, Asada Watchman, it always comes back to accountability.
Yeah.
Are you willing to be accountable for your part in the destruction or the erosion of your camp or the erosion of your community? Are you ready to accept that? If not, then maybe you shouldn't be in the camp. Maybe you should be doing something else with your time.
That's right. That's right.
UPS is hiring.
Wish I would have got UPS for my what do you call that, roadcaster, man. Next week will be better, man. I think it was a great conversation, great dialogue today. Next week we're going to be implementing the music, Hebrew music. Going to be playing it. Like I said, my roadcaster didn't come today. It was supposed to be here, but FedEx, oh my goodness. But next week, if you're tuning in right now, hopefully you'll show up next week and dialogue with us, leave some comments, give us some things you might want us to speak on, but best believe it's going to be a great topic next week as well. And we're just going to be ironing all this stuff out, man. Trying to iron all these things out, bring some solutions for these things that we have going on within our community, a Hebrew community that is plaguing us in a sense, not allowing us to thrive or not allowing us to be successful. What is that? Is that Jeremiah 29, when it talks up, raise up daughters and sons and marry them off and, grow your own food, things like that. Like, these are things we should be doing, not saying the things that they're doing today is not good, but we need to start coming together a little more. That chapter to me it's just a lot more important than what we use it as, in my opinion. And if we can start, living these things out a little more and stop going just on the social media and using it the way that we use it, and just start, being great leaders and great followers, man, we'll just succeed a lot more. And I see it being done. I know a lot of communities, and honestly, they're not on the forefront either. They're not, on your Facebook and all that, and talking about all these different topics and debating and stuff, because they're focusing on what the Tanakh tells us to do. That's trying to grow our community and trying to build as a people. So with that,
and it's not gonna be on the forefront because, just like we spoke about in the last platform that, the platform that we had 2 years ago, that it's just like talking about functional families. There's no market for functional families.
Mm-hmm.
There's no drama attached to it, and so it doesn't make good fodder for for the people. People want to see dysfunction because dysfunction sells. Dysfunction, you see what I'm saying? So dysfunction among our people, it jacks up the algorithm. So people don't want to hear about the functional aspects of the Hebrew community because it doesn't serve their purpose. Their purpose is to show all of the dysfunction and to convince people that it'll never get better. Our people are just they're unredeemable or whatever because, again, toxic followership. It's a way to exonerate their own dysfunction. So they put all the dysfunction over here, so that people don't pay attention. They're not paying attention to the dysfunction that's standing in front of them, which is themselves.
Okay. Well, we appreciate those of you that tune in. Again, every Thursday, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. Y'all Conscience Radio, where if it's not conscious, it's unacceptable. Shalom, shalom to all of you. Shalom to you, Chief. Until next time.
Hallelujah. Shalom, shalom.